Okay, we're back to this is now part three of the personality disorders discussion. And now we're going to talk about cluster C. And the first one in cluster C is the avoidant personality disorder. This is someone who is more than just someone who has social anxiety disorder. This is someone who actively avoids because of pervasive social discomfort, overwhelming fear of negative evaluation. They avoid social contact. They are often social isolates. So you wouldn't want to say someone who is socially isolated is someone who is schizoid, schizotypal, or avoidant until you had more information, because they all share that kind of presentation. Anyway, avoidants are very socially isolated because they fear the evaluation as being negative. They imagine that uniformly, always, they will get that. They are very hurt. They are very hurt and very easily hurt. And by so this fear of disapproval is consistent in all situations, even one-on-one. So do they have one or two close friends? Maybe. So they will call themselves introverted, but introversion is something completely different. Introverts don't fear negative evaluation by others. Or introverts simply enjoy time being alone, and they don't need to be with other people. That's vastly different, yes? Now, the next one that I want to talk about is dependent personality disorder. And dependent personality disorder is a good name for this, because what these folks do is rely on other people for their very well-being, and in that small way overlap with borderlines. Yeah, they rely on others to make major and minor life decisions. So I had a client once who came to see me, and she was a high functioning person with this disorder, but it was severe, and she wanted me to tell her when she should be coming for sessions, and she would not hear of it that I wanted to know about what her employment situation was and what her schedule was. She wouldn't, just tell me, I'll be here. I'll whenever you want me to be. That was just a tiny little representation of a vast desire to have other people make decisions for them. So they're very clingy in relationships, and that they also have this big fear of abandonment, and in that way they share that fear with borderlines. Yeah. So they lack self-confidence, they don't have a lot of autonomy, and they view others as being much more important, special, and competent than they are. That's very common. And they have if you look back at their history, what you see is that they're exceedingly clingy, they're exceedingly submissive to others. And they do need reassurance. They need a lot of reassurance that yes, it's okay, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. And when they're alone, though, they feel very anxious and helpless. Are you all beginning to see how diagnosis of personality disorders is difficult? Oh, yeah. Okay. So we don't know the cause of this. You can talk about what the psychoanalysts and the psychodynamic people say about the influences of events and relationships within early childhood. You can talk about learning theory. You can talk about all sorts of things, but we really don't actually know. What seems to be the most common view is that it has to do with, in infancy, the first 18 months or thereabouts, developing what's called an anxious attachment. Okay? That has some reasonable connection to what they look like in adulthood. Okay? And then the last one is what's called obsessive compulsive personality disorder. This is not OCD, but it shares some features. Okay, so here we go. So they are very rigid in what they do and how they do it and how things have to be. The bed has to be made each morning, it has to be made in a certain way, and everything has to be particular. Yes, they're often clean freaks and germaphobes, but they don't have these rituals and they don't have these obsessions that the people with OCD have. They look like they have rituals, but really it's just a rigid sort of desire to keep things the way they are. It's not one thing that they do, or it's not washing your hands 100 times a day. It's not checking the door 50 times. They'll insist that the doors are locked, but they don't check them 50 times, okay? So they don't complete projects. So because they're perfectionists, they're very moralistic and conscientious. They have very, very high self-expectations, and they don't want to put out any products, say, at work that aren't, in their view, perfect. So it makes them procrastinate in handing things in. They don't complete projects very well. Now they may collect things and not throw them out, so they do share in some cases, an overlap with hoarding disorder, but they tend not to have filthy hoarding collections. They will be neat collectors if they are in that group of sharing collection with hoarders. They'll be very neat and particular. They'll have curio cabinets, for example. Okay. They are very miserly in their spending. They often save very small amounts, and they'll save them in jars, and they're often they're very frugal, and they tend to be somewhat emotionally shallow. And the major way that they handle stress is to intellectualize it. They create the abstract so that they don't have to experience the anxieties associated with the situation. But again, true obsessions and true compulsions are absent in this disorder. Okay? Now, this one sometimes comes along with avoidant personality disorder, and you can see how those two things might fit together, yes? Yeah. So think about that, if you will. So we don't know where this one we don't know where this arises from. We don't know what causes it in general. We know that the cognitive behavioral folks, generally the cognitive folks in particular, think that this comes from unrealistic expectations about perfection, that perfection is a worthy goal and an attainable goal, and that this sets up a whole sequelae, a whole resulting set of behaviors. Yeah, I'm sure that's partly true, isn't it? So they get worse with age, and that has to do with the fact that people have a hard time being around them, because this is a group that people who are around them will say they have control issues. Well, you have to control everything, don't you? You have everything just the way you want it. Yeah. So they often push people away, unfortunately. And as you get older, that habit becomes painful for the person with this disorder. In fact, as they get much older, if they lose any cognitive function or they lose any social connection, which is typical, this causes more pain for them. Yeah. So that's what we have for the personality disorders. I hope you enjoy this. Let me know what you think. And please subscribe or like and hit the ding buttons when a new one comes up. I'll keep them coming. Thanks. Bye.